Terence Crawford, undisputed, 3-belt holder at welterweight. Boots Ennis is the other one. Has he got any mandatories coming up, or what's the situation with him?
No, at this moment, we were led to believe that there was going to be a rematch with Spence, but I don't believe that will happen. He's undisputed. I mean, he's without a doubt the best welterweight. We'll see what happens in the coming days. We have given his promoter and himself some time to decide what is the best course of action at this moment.
And just like that, it's over. The WBC president, Mauricio Sulaiman, he says we were led to believe there would be an Errol Spence, Terence Crawford Part 2, but the latest update, he doesn't believe that fight will happen next. Wow. Come in, smash the like button. So the clip you heard at the beginning was from Mauricio Sulaiman. Again, this is the WBC president. And in this recent interview with Mauricio Sulaiman, he stated that basically we were under the impression in the interviews with pro boxing fans. Sulaiman is stating we were under the impression that Errol Spence Crawford Part 2 was happening. Then he goes on to say, I do not believe that that fight will be next now. I made a video about this probably a few weeks ago at this moment. And I told you the fight, the rematch that some of you want to see between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford was in jeopardy. And now you pretty much have that confirmation. Now in this picture, you see the former WBC and unified champion Errol Spence Jr. with his team. Clearly, he fought Terence Crawford. The better man on the night one, that was Terence Crawford. And now the WBC is with Terence Crawford. Crawford has all the belts except for the IBF, which stay tuned to the end of this video because I got a lot to say about the new IBF champion, Jaron Boots Ennis, and also Terence Crawford. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the end of the video. So Errol Spence loses. He loses his 3 belts to Terence Crawford, who came in with 1 belt. That 1 belt was the WBO belt that he got in his first fight at welterweight versus Jeff Horn. I was there in Las Vegas. I went to the fight. Terence Crawford has maintained that WBO throughout his whole journey in the welterweight division. And then it culminated with his best win, or what people, in my opinion, would say would be his best win, which was the win over Errol Spence Jr. But now with the WBC Prezi, he's telling you that the rematch ain't happening next. That's what he's basically saying in that brand new interview. So a lot of people are questioning it. A lot of people are wondering, what does this mean? What's next? I would honestly say that being the WBC president, Mauricio Sulaiman, given the fact of his position with the WBC and that fact that Crawford has the WBC belt, I would like to say that Mauricio Sulaiman is in the know, because I know what's going to happen. What happens nowadays on the internet, all in the video dancing, is when I make videos, people hear all types of random information on the internet. So it's a free country, freedom of speech. You're entitled to believe who and whatever you choose to believe. But the problem with that is there's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about that put out information. My information for years on end, as you guys can see, is accurate, is researched, and you can take it to the bank. So I want to say that Sulaiman would be in the know regarding this fight because his company, the WBC, would be sanctioning this fight. Like they would have to know, what the game plan is. They would have to know. They would have to be included in that. Like, hey, what's the deal? What's the latest? Because you see Terence Crawford is holding their belt. The infamous green strap that everybody knows about, right? So, yeah, I would like to say that Mauricio Sulaiman, because here's the thing, is like people in boxing, they pick and choose. Like Sulaiman might have said something that you didn't like before. So as a result, people will just discount like, oh, Sulaiman doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. But again, Terence Crawford has his belt, so he would have to know what's going on or what the status is. Another reason why this information has to be communicated is due to the fact that they have to be kept in the loop, so to speak, because they need to know Terence Crawford's next move as it pertains to mandatories and things like that. We just watched Terence Crawford get stripped of his IBF belt because an up-and-comer who's been calling him out, which again, stay tuned to the end of this video and I'll be able to talk about the Jaron Boots Ennis situation more. But with the IBF, I get it. It's a different belt. It's a different sanctioning body. They deemed that Crawford was fighting Errol Spence Jr. per rematch clause. So as a result, Jaron Boots Ennis wasn't going to get his shot by the allotted time. So they stripped him. I just want to see you strip right now, cause it's yeah. I just want to see you strip. They stripped him. Now different people felt different types of way. Again, stay tuned to the end of this video because we're going to talk about the Boots and Bud angle, but I got to take that towards the end of this video. So Crawford has all the belts but one. Now in hindsight, looking back, peep this. Bud, his mandatory was Jaron Boots Ennis with the IBF. The reason where he wasn't available and why he got stripped is because he didn't fight his IBF mandatory Jaron Boots Ennis. So now it's a bit of a waste because everybody thought the Errol Spence 2 fight was going to be the next order of business, but you got stripped of one of your titles and now you're not even fighting Errol Spence Jr. It's looking like. So you see how that's a problem. Like basically he didn't need to get stripped, but I can't fault Terence Crawford for that because Errol Spence recently kind of came out and said he had cataract surgery and there's probably been other issues with the negotiating. So I don't think it's safe to say that Crawford knew that this fight wouldn't be next. I think I don't blame Crawford for the rematch not happening. I think Crawford fully was on board to run it back with Errol Spence. He really thought he had the obligation of fighting Errol Spence. And then per Errol Spence's health, per how the last fight went, and maybe some more things behind the scenes under the hood, the fight is not happening next. Now, for me, I'm not really mad at that. I'm just going to be real. I'm not really mad at the fight not happening next because based on I'm not a big rematch guy. I don't really like rematches unless there's controversy there. Like George Groves when he fought Carl Froch, right? I thought Andre Ward beat Kovalev in the first fight, but it was razor thin. It was pretty close. right? These are the instances where I don't mind a rematch because both fighters have something to prove. You know, Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano. The first fight was tooth and nail, and nobody really clearly won. Wilder Fury 1 to Wilder Fury 2, right? You can make an argument for all these types of fights. But when it comes to Crawford and Errol Spence, Crawford did such a bang-up job in defeating Errol Spence, it left people like Errol Spence shouldn't rematch Terence Crawford. Kind of like, what's the point? We've seen this, and like, here's the thing with the rematch. When the fight is not competitive, like meaning Errol Spence got dropped 3 times, he got stopped for the first time, and Crawford's speed, Crawford's jab, Crawford jabbing over Errol's jab, you know, the southpaw stance of Crawford, he pulled it all together in that particular performance. So it just kind of led people to believe, do we need to see this again? So I was never really keen on the rematch because it was, first of all, it was going to be pay-per-view. And like I said, the notion was that Terence Crawford already convincingly beat him, right? So it's like, why? It was going to be a very hard sell, put it that way. It's going to be a very hard sell. Instead of Errol Spence, like, for one, I don't even know if Errol Spence can comfortably make welterweight. That's a big thing. And that you can say, oh, you're making excuses, a cop-out. I'm being honest with you. I don't know if it's safe for him to properly, because he hired a nutritionist and he made weight and arrived at the scale at the proper weight, but yet and still he looked like flatter than we've ever seen, right? And I do think weight played a factor, not taking away from Terence Crawford and Terence Crawford's ability. But I do think Errol Spence, he just kind of foolishly stayed and languished at a division, and I don't think he could comfortably make it. But in his brain, he's a warrior. In his brain, he's like, yo, this is my last hurrah. Let me beat this dude. The fans want it. So I'm going to beat him, and then I'll move up. And he literally told you that. He said, this is like before, I'm talking about before he lost to Crawford. He says, this is my final fight at welterweight. So he knew, but it's just like bank robbers in the movie or in real life. You get greedy and you keep robbing the banks, but then you left a clue in the last robbery. So the feds was onto you and they kind of narrowed it down and figured out your pattern. And then you rob that final bank thinking it's the last score. And that's the one that gets you caught. And now you're doing fed time for the bank robberies. It's a classic gangster flick type of synopsis. Carlito's Way. You stayed in the streets too long, and then there were some newcomers. You stayed in the game too long, and then your last little score, and then you're going to retire and then ride off into the sunset, and then it don't work out. Okay, I'm reloaded. You guys think you big time? Here come the pain. Right? On some Carlito's Way. So I think Errol Spence truly stayed at the division far too long. But I told you I would break down the boots angle. So now Terence Crawford being stripped, he really didn't need to get stripped because he's free in terms of we don't know his next opponent. And Jaron Ennis, his fight hasn't been announced. So technically they could have fought. The problem is Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford believes he's above fighting a Jaron Boots Ennis. He feels that that's a backward step for him. But now the options seem to be thinning out and slimming up. Terence Crawford, who is he going to fight? Tim Tszyu fighting Keith Thurman. Canelo said, no. Canelo said, no, this guy is too small. I would be assuming all of the risk to fight against a Terence Crawford because this guy would be moving up 21 pounds to my division and he stands everything to win. And I would assume all of the responsibility and all the risk. And Terence Crawford, you know, when I beat him or if I beat him, they'll just say he was too small. So Canelo doesn't look like an option. Now, I seen Keyshawn Davis did an interview and he's boys with Terence Crawford. His advice to this news was Bud should keep calling out Canelo Alvarez. Sounds very silly to me. Sounds like a very silly game plan to just keep calling out someone who told you that they're not going to fight you. And said it clear as day, explain why, but you're just going to keep calling them out. So I think Bud is looking to retire for real. I think he wants to retire, and he's just looking for one big bag and one big score, and it has to be the right one. I truly think that's kind of his aim and where his head's at. He feels he's given his life to boxing, or he has given his life to boxing, but he doesn't feel like he's been appreciated in the proper way. So I think he's thinking about retirement. And, you know, a Canelo presents a big bag and a major opportunity, and then he could ride off to the sunset. But the only thing in boxing, people aren't going to give you these big opportunities if it's a one-way street, if it only benefits you. I tell you guys all the time, my dad was in the military, so there's a military term called WIFM. What's in it for me? And that's what Canelo is asking. If I fight this welterweight, what's in it for me? And I see, and I'll probably, if y'all want me to go deeper, pause. If y'all want me to make a detailed video about this, but there's a lot of people like, oh, but Canelo fought smaller guys. He has. He's fought Jose Cito Lopez. He fought smaller guy in Jermell Charlo, blah, blah, blah. But he's also in that position where he can kind of pick and choose. So if he chose that smaller guy, then they're going to get it. But if he's telling you straight up he's not going to do it, then what are you going to do? You can't strong arm Canelo. You're not in his division, so you can't force the mandatory. So realistically, Jaron Boots Ennis is that ticket for Terence Crawford. He's available. Errol Spence is out of the picture. WBC has now confirmed. I mean, what is Crawford going to do? He's going to just sit and try to cherry pick the best opportunity from the sidelines. I mean, the WBC, they did mention in that video that they're going to give him a pass and some time to figure it out, because again, this is not Crawford's doing. Errol Spence cataract surgery, and I do think some things in negotiations perhaps happen, but either way, Crawford can't. He was down to fight Errol again, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Let me know what you guys think.